It's easy to overlook some things in a game as massive as Elden Ring. With the many mechanics and different items and quest lines you come across, it can be intimidating even for Souls veterans. Because of that, we wanted to share some things we've learned from our time with the game so you won't have to make the same mistakes. We'll be covering things like the ideal starting item, Ashes of War, tips for summons and more, so let's get right into it. So the first thing that's important to get right is your starting item. During character creation, you can of course pick a keepsake, an extra item for you to start the game out with. And while it might be tempting to pick the golden seed to immediately get an extra healing flask or the crimson amber medallion for the boost of health, I'd argue that the best way to start your adventure is by picking up the stone sword key. This will grant you 2 keys to open areas that are closed off by these gargoyle statues, and we are going to use ours pretty much straight away to get an amazing talisman. You see, if you play it smart, you can start out the game with the Erdtree's Favor talisman, which boosts your health, stamina and maximum equipment load. So an amazing boost to your character throughout the entire game. And you can grab this thing as soon as you leave the tutorial area. Walk up to this gargoyle statue and interact with it to open the gate, which will cost you both of your keys, but don't worry, it is more than worth it. If you, by the way, didn't pick the stone sword keys as a starting item, you can get one over here next to the shack where you meet Rodrika for the first time, and one on the bridge over here on the way to the Weeping Peninsula, so that should let you enter as well. And yes, in a previous video I noted that pretty much the only thing I found here was pain, but thanks to Master Gibbs and other commenters on that video, we now know that this amazing Erdtree's Favor talisman is located here. So in order to get it, we go down the ladder and then run out of the poison to solid ground. There will be a giant death chariot, or whatever this thing is, rolling towards you, so wait for it to turn around, then run down the slope and hide in a corner and wait for it to pass. Some of these contain enemies, but they shouldn't give you too much trouble. On the last corner, however, we want to make sure to head to the right side of the slope, then drop down from here and run further down to where the path narrows. Here we want to carefully drop down on the platform below, deal with the imps and then move on to the stairs at the end of the hallway. There's a flame trap at the bottom of it, take care of that and then keep heading straight until you enter this room. You can already see the item from here, but there's a grafted scion that will drop near it, so just be mindful of him, run around him and grab the item. And there you go, you now have an amazing talisman that boosts 3 very important stats right off the bat. Another thing that will help you out a lot is of course having a lot of runes, and there are some graveyards in the world that are full of this golden rune currency, like this one over here on the map. And while it might be tempting to immediately consume these for their extra runes, it's actually way smarter to hang on to these until you actually need them. Think of it like this: if you die, you lose your runes. Sure, you can get them back if you reach the place of your death, but if you die a second time, those runes are gone. Except that's not true for the golden runes in your inventory. You keep those until you use them, and at that point the runes become usable, but you can also lose them. So way smarter than to use these items as a sort of personal piggy bank, so you can use some runes for if you need some extra for a level up or to buy something from a merchant. But in general, only use these golden runes if you need them to buy something immediately. Otherwise, it's best to save them up for later. Before we move on to some combat related tips that will significantly improve your damage, remember to leave a like if you liked the video and subscribe as well if you don't want to miss our next Elden Ring video. So another mistake I was guilty of was not using the new attack options enough. Elden Ring added jumping attacks, which you perform by jumping and doing a heavy attack, charged heavy attacks, which you perform by holding the heavy attack button, and guard counters, which you perform by pulling off a block and then following up with a heavy attack. All of these are very effective at breaking an opponent's posture. Like in Sekiro, your opponent has a posture meter that can break, leaving them open for a very powerful visceral attack. Unlike Sekiro, however, in Elden Ring you can't actually see this meter, making it easy to forget about it. But you really shouldn't, as using these new attacks to your advantage will really amp up your damage. Regular enemies are very vulnerable and will often be staggered by just 1 or 2 hits, but even bosses can be opened up for a visceral attack if you hit them with these attacks enough. And especially the charged heavy attacks are way easier to hit when you have an ally taking the aggro for you, like a spirit summon for example. And while I do still love my jellyfish buddy, there's another type of summon that I've discovered that's a lot stronger than they actually seem, which are skeletons. You see, skeleton enemies in Elden Ring must be killed twice, once in their normal form and then once again while they are reforming. If you don't kill them while reforming, they just get back up again and you'll have to kill them. The same thing, however, is true for the skeletons you summon, which means that these guys can revive themselves during a fight. I found my first skeletal summon from the Marina boss fight over here on the map, not too difficult to fight if you do it on horseback. But after defeating this boss you get the skeletal militiamen, 2 skeletons with spears that can respawn when they get killed. Pretty good. Another new feature in Elden Ring are the Ashes of War, and while I do really like this system, I don't use my skills nearly enough because I use a shield in my offhand, which means that unless I two-hand my weapon, I can't use its weapon art. Well, Boomstick Gaming actually has an amazing tip for this. Link to his channel will be in the video description, because you can disable your shield's weapon art, which allows you to use the one on your main hand weapon while using a shield. The way to do this is to head over here to the War Master shack, where we will find an NPC that sells us Ashes of War. From him, we want to buy the no skill ash for 600 runes. If we then put that on our shield, we are able to use our main weapon's weapon art, so for me it's this Sacred Slash I have on my Morningstar, and use it while still holding our shield in the offhand. Another quick tip that will really help you once you start exploring outside of the Limgrave region is that Torrent can safely carry you through otherwise dangerous surfaces. For instance, in the Caelid region of the map there are these red pools that give you the Scarlet Rot debuff if you stand in them long enough. But if you ride through these on the back of your mount, you will not receive any status buildup at all. So really useful while exploring areas like this. And speaking of exploration, I'm going to pass it to Joyce for a bit, as she found a really useful item as well while exploring, so take it away.
Yes, thank you Dennis. So for the spellcaster players like myself, I found out an easy way to increase the amount of memory slots, aka your spell slots. At the start of the game you start out with 2, which is fine because you only have like 2 spells to choose from. But eventually during your journey you will find more spells to work with, but you can only memorize 2 spells at once. You can switch out your arsenal by going to a grace point and pick the memorize spell option. Luckily, there's an object in Elden Ring that can help you with that. It's called a memory stone, which lets you increase your memory slots by 1. There are a lot of locations where to find them, but we'll share the 2 easiest ones here. If you have the Round Table Hold unlocked, you can find the Twin Maiden Husks here, who are the merchants of the hold. Here you can purchase a memory stone for 3000 runes. Now, this looks like a lot, but if you use the golden rune tactic that Dennis explained in this video, you can use those to make it easier to get enough to buy one. They only sell 1, but it will increase your spell slots to 3, which is great already. Now here in this footage there are 4, but that's because I already found one before getting this, and getting this one is also very simple. In Weeping Peninsula, the area we talked about in our previous video, you'll find a tower over here on the map called Ordis's Rise. It's a big sorcerer tower that looks all over the area. The tower is guarded by a couple of wolves, so be careful to kill these first before moving forward. In front of the stairs to the entrance of the tower, you'll find a gargoyle statue holding a book. Interacting with it says that you have to seek 3 wise beasts. This in order to open the seal that's now covering the entryway. When I walked towards it and then turned around, I all of a sudden saw these glowing ghostly turtles walking around. The first one you'll find on the left side of the tower, hiding in the bushes, and the second one in front of the entrance. You have to kill them in order to complete the puzzle. Now the third and final is a tricky one. If you move to the right side of the tower, you'll find a pond, and it looks like there's something in there. Grab your weapon of choice, attack the invisible force, and there you'll figure out it's the final turtle, and you'll get a notification that the seal on the door has opened. Enter the tower, walk up the stairs, and at the top you'll find the treasure chest holding the memory stone. And voila, you'll have now 4 memory slots to work with, which come in handy when you want to memorize a variety of spells to your arsenal while exploring and fighting in the lands between.
Thanks Joyce, I definitely need to get me some of those stones. I could really use some extra spells in my arsenal. And while you might stumble onto cool stuff like this by yourself, did you know that the various merchants in the game can sometimes help you out with that? Some of them sell notes that can actually lead you to an item or the solution to a puzzle. Like this note I bought near the beginning from Kale, telling me exactly how to find the Flask of Wondrous Physic, which is a really useful item we covered in a previous video. So definitely check a merchant's inventory for notes, as some of them can lead to amazing discoveries you might otherwise have missed. And a very good example was this walking mausoleum note I bought from a merchant on the Weeping Peninsula. You might remember them from the trailers, these giant walking buildings. Well, turns out that this specific one wants his feet cleaned, so I did that by hitting this rot substance off with my weapon, and suddenly it dug back into the ground and I was able to check what was inside. And well, turns out that these house one of the most useful features in the game, although it will really only be useful to you once you've beaten some specific bosses. You see, certain bosses like Godric at the end of Stormville Castle drop an item known as a Remembrance. These allow you to craft weapons or items from that boss as a special NPC known as the Finger Reader. I'm not sure if she is accessible immediately, but I was able to visit her in the Round Table Hold after I killed Godric. So at this Finger Reader, you turn in your Remembrance and some runes for one of 2 weapons inspired by the boss. So for Godric it's his axe and this dragon gauntlet. After making one, the remembrance is spent and you can't make the other weapon. Except that's where the mausoleum comes in. At one of these, and the game makes it clear that there should be multiple, you can duplicate a remembrance so you can create both boss weapons if you want. The downside is that you can only do this once per mausoleum, so you want to really think which remembrance you want to duplicate. I wanted to try it out, so now I have both of Godric's weapons, but that does mean I have to find a new mausoleum for the next remembrance I find if I want to duplicate it. So really useful if you have difficulty choosing between two boss weapons. So that should save you from some of the mistakes we made while playing Elden Ring. Of course, if you like the video, remember to give it a like, subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next Elden Ring video, and if you want, you can watch our previous one where we tell you all about an optional area with some amazing items to find. For now, thanks everyone so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!